let's build the system. So remember that let's assume that for a student to graduate, he or she must have a GPA of a GPA greater than 3. Then let's implement this using now the classes. So to do that, so we are going to first create our class. So we are going to say class graduation. Then, so remember that's a step 1. So the next step we now want to do is we want to make it public because we want to access in the variable. So we can have now I'm just doing it quick because we've already done this. So string name, and then maybe we have another one string, maybe the school or college. Then let's have a GPA. So because the GPA, okay, let's just use an integer. So let's assume now that we are just using our integers. So the next thing we want to do now is we want to create in a constructor. So let's create a constructor here. So remember the constructor will take in the string, that's the name of the student. Then also it's going to take in the school, and then it's going to take in let's say an integer. So we have an integer here, or let's have a boolean. So let's just use a boolean. So boolean maybe like GPA, right? So let's just have this one as a boolean. So let's have that as a boolean. Now let's name this one correctly. So that's the name. And then once we're done with the constructor, then we can now directly assign them. So we're going to assign the name to the name, and then the school, you're going to assign it to the school. Then also we have our boolean here, so that's the GPA. Then we're going to say now GPA inside here, so just capital A. Then let's create another function. So once we are done with that, then we can now just start taking in these variables instantiation. So we can say now graduation, then we can say student 1. Then for the student 1 we can say now the name is Owen, then the school is maybe School of Nursing, and then the other one is we have a GPA of 5. So let's actually make it an integer here. So let's just make it an integer so that we can store this in a result. So we're going to switch from using a boolean to now using an integer. So let's say we have now a function that we now take in. So let's create a boolean function. So boolean, let's say as good as passed, or maybe so that's the boolean. So then we are going to now check using the if else statement. So let's say if now the student has so let's first run this so that we can now see up to that point that everything is working pretty well. So I can now see out my results here. So I can say student 1 dot maybe let's get the school. So if I now print this, that means the compiler would now return to me the school where the student is from. So we now have the student is from School of Nursing. So up to that point our code works. Now let's work on the grading system, assuming that the student has maybe GPA of 3. So let's write now here some code that we now evaluate. So to do that, we're going to use an if else statement. So we're going to check. So if the entered GPA, maybe if the entered GPA is greater than 3, then we are going to maybe return 2. So then else we are going to return a false. Now this will actually return will give us now do the student qualify for graduation, then return a true value. That's it. It's going to return a 2, or it's going to return 1. Then for the case of false, then it's going to return a 0. So let's see. So we can now access this. So we can now say out student 1 dot maybe as passed. So let's see what would actually be returned. So we now have we have passed in 5 as our GPA. So let's see what would actually be printed. So we forgot here to end. So if we now run our code, you see now that it's returning 1 because according to the way we set our code is the student entered 5, and then we were checking from this GPA Boolean function here. So if the GPA is greater than 3, then return 1, else return 0. So to do this, we can also maybe like after returning true, then we can maybe print to the student like, hey, you are graduating. Else, now let's say we entered in maybe like 2. So if you now run this, then it is going to return 0. That means the student didn't qualify for graduation. Again, you can maybe like reuse the same case. So you can have maybe like graduation, then you can have a student 2. So we can maybe like say this is maybe like Kevin, and now Kevin from maybe like School of Education, and then has a GPA of 4. So we can now like print out this. So see out student 2 dot as passed. So let's see. So let me just print this in a different line. So if we now run our code, we see that now we have 1. So then we can now print the same case. So we can now print out the school year. So we can say see out student 2 dot the school, and then have it in a new line. So if I now run my code, you see that the School of Education qualifies for graduation, and the other one from School of Nursing doesn't, because depending on how we set our if-else statement and the booleans, we now returns depending on the condition we have. So that is how you can like combine. So what I was trying to test here is the way you can combine these the constructors with functions, and also we can also have other defaults. So of course we have not included a default constructor. So to do that, we can actually do it quick. So we can just say graduation and then enter it. Then you can have maybe the name by default as maybe like Kabarak. So we can have Kabarak as a university. Then the school maybe like, let's say it's certified. So Kabarak is just a university, of course, here in Kenya. So then the next thing you can have here is we can have an integer. So maybe like we're located in county number 27. So by default, this will be printed if you don't pass in your constructor with arguments. So assuming that we don't now pass in these arguments for our first case, and then we now run our code. So okay, we have a problem here. Integer 27. All right. So this is all you have to do while understanding the way the constructors work together and also the booleans. So up next, let's do a quick jump on the getters and setters. Then we now finish on class inheritance.